Greetings, losers. Oh, so by now, my subscriber total has probably skyrocketed to 5 to 10 people. So you guys are in for a real treat. In my intro episode, I kind of told you a bit about me and my thoughts and likes and dislikes and how I got to this point in my life and what prompted me to be a middle-aged man trying to make a podcast when I can barely tie my shoes without drooling on them. Then I promised I wouldn't talk too much about politics. But I was also stupid enough to name this podcast Right Down the Left in an obvious play on words related to political leaning. So I shot my mouth off about my views on political topics, and to be fair, my personal political views on some broad-reaching social issues do impact and play into my views on the cool things that people like you and I love. So things like movies and games and TVs and TV shows, comics, and everything in between. So I thought, what better way to lose the few subscribers that I have, that I've gained, than to spend half an hour explaining my thoughts on society as a whole, and kind of going into depth into what it means to be a centrist, how I view my thoughts as being sort of in the middle, and peeking into the brain of someone who actually doesn't mind being wrong or hearing someone who totally disagrees. Because again, I hate arguing, but arguing is necessary. And I think that's one of the first things that we all have to once again become comfortable with. It's the notion that people are going to disagree with you. People are going to listen to your viewpoints on some key issues, on hot button issues, and they're not going to see things your way. Your responsibility as a normal human being is to listen to those opinions and to accept the fact that people have a right to have them and to respect the fact that people have those opinions. That's what's missing today. It's that conversation. It's the ability to sort of move a little bit back towards the center of things on both sides and to compromise and to at least live with the notion that people are not going to see things the way you want to see them. So, sorry, I'm just getting distracted here because like I mentioned in the first episode, I'm, even though I basically hold this entire family and household together, I'm relegated to the basement like a piece of shit. And it's an okay basement. It gets finished and everything. And I did a pretty good job, if I do say so myself, of sorting out my home office. But I'm just looking up at the ceiling around the patio doors to outside, and I think I see maybe 3 different little spider nests. And that is probably the worst thing on earth. In the realm of terrible things, there's COVID, which is, I would, out of a 10, let's give it a 7. And then, in the Congo, the civil war, where rebel soldiers are using machetes and cutting the breasts off of village women, that's like a 9.5. Spiders are a 10. And I think it's important for you to understand that context. So just so we're clear on that. And I'm going to be staring up at the ceiling the rest of the time. And one of them moved. Oh, Jesus Christ. Anyways, okay. So I've lost my train of thought because of those damn spiders. So like I said, I want to, give you a peek into the mind of a centrist and on some key topics and just to get to that point where, politics and views in society in general aren't an either or. They can't be, because a healthy society depends on having that nuance, having that discussion. Because that's the way I am now, no matter how much I'm told I'm not. And being a centrist doesn't mean you're wishy-washy or perpetually on the fence. It also doesn't mean that you're, centrist about being a racist and all the bullshit that extremists on both sides like to spout off on Twitter. I think it means being pragmatic. It means looking at both sides of an argument and reaching an internal consensus and balance that respects both sides of the coin, while still leaning ever so slightly towards your own personal viewpoints, your own side. I mean, I don't know, a U.S. senator on one side of the aisle, but still being able to work with someone on the other side to present legislation that addresses real societal needs that affect people all over the political spectrum, while compromising to make sure that both sides are just happy enough to pass it. That's how society is supposed to work. That's how the American government is supposed to work, and it has worked that way up until especially the Trump era. And we'll get into that in a second, but Trump is just the worst fucking thing that's ever happened to your country. And if you don't agree with that, you are fucked in the head. That you see, there I go. I'm assuming that a Trump supporter doesn't have good reasons for supporting Trump, and I kind of do see a few reasons why a person would support him. There are also reasons that are batshit insane. But anyways, I'm going to stop. I'm going to get to Trump in a minute because why not? But anyways, my point is that democracy and freedom, they don't work unless people can move their dials off of where they are and back towards the other direction a little bit. And at the very least, have a conversation. Now, I'm not naive enough to believe that everything a person believes can be centered. Hell, I know in my case, I'll go to war to keep religion and social justice and anything other than cold, hard, peer-reviewed fact out of biology and science classrooms. Now, normally, this is where I would say that there's no room for conversation here. There's no middle ground, no debate, and nor should there be. But I guess that's kind of the beauty of science and math. They are and they should be immune to any society-based conversations. They are simply what they are. You either accept them or you don't. Science is science. And it pains me that it's constantly a struggle to fight against political or religious viewpoints that try to differ from that or alter from that. And, regardless of whether it's creationism or it's, biological sex no longer exists because we just say it doesn't, science class has to stay pure because that's how we move forward as a society. That's how we get all this cool shit and we develop new iPhones and cures the diseases and explore the solar system. Oh my God, can we just get something fucking going to Europa? Like, can we stop worrying about male and female being, no longer in tune with societal thoughts and build a space drill that'll get down there and finally introduce us to the sentient squid race that are like super intelligent there? Okay. I'm going to stop talking about this because it's getting me all excitable and many of the things that we do face today, they can and they must have nuance and scale for all our sakes. The ability to disagree with one another, yet hear and respect opinions, has disappeared rapidly and has led us to this incredibly messed up point in history. So today, for this episode, I'm going to go through some of those hot button issues, some of those key things that, will help give you some insight into what I think a balanced and thoughtful and centrist viewpoint might be. A viewpoint that, it might lean in one direction versus the other, but it's not so far in that other direction that I can't accept the viewpoints from the other side, right? And I go back to what I said in the intro episode. My views on these subjects, they haven't changed at all in the past 5 years. 5 years ago, these views were very liberal, very left-leaning. Now they could get me fired and doxxed and my house burnt down and my dog killed. This is the world we live in, and it makes me really sad. And it drove me to this whole podcast thing, to just getting this crap off my chest and hoping that there are other people out there who they're sick of this shit. And they want us to all get back to a sane point where we could at least compromise and talk and disagree without throwing helmets at cops' faces and calling them pigs. So that leads up into the first one, which is the creamy enchilada, the big Bubba can, the Hemi V8 of topics, which is Black Lives Matter. We all saw the video in its entirety, okay? We all saw a police officer kill an unarmed black man in custody while several other officers managed the crowd instead of patting him on the shoulder and saying, dude, get off his neck. We witnessed police officers commit murder, and they are being punished accordingly. And I know the body cam footage was released, and Floyd, was kind of a dick, but that doesn't excuse what happened. He was murdered. The end of story. But there are parts that we aren't allowed to talk about, parts that absolutely do not excuse what happened, but are still relevant to the conversation as a whole. And let's get into this for a second, because as an example, more white people are killed by police than black people consistently year over year. That is a fact. The person killed, Floyd, was a repeat violent offender. Okay, so when the cops were arresting him, they obviously ran his record and they knew this guy is some serious shit, and we can't be super gentle about it because, we're at danger. Let's talk about the fact that black people are 9.5 times more likely to be involved in a violent crime. And if you're a police officer, regardless of your race or gender, and you're going to arrest someone like Floyd, that bias, it has to be in the back of your head. You can't just get rid of it and push it away. That, I'm 9.5 times more likely to not be able to go home and see my family tonight because I'll be dead or in a hospital. How about the fact that police officers in general, are drastically underpaid and undertrained consistently? There are almost 1 million police officers in the United States, and reported cases like this are so infrequent that they're almost a statistical anomaly. When you look at the number of people killed by police versus, how many arrests are made and how many police officers there are, and it just, this isn't the prevalent and overwhelming societal issue that it's made out to be. And again, I worry about saying this stuff because I don't want it to sound as though I'm denying that there's an issue. The police system in the U.S., it needs a systemic overhaul top to bottom. And I say that as someone who's not subject to it every day. More focus needs to be on training and performance reviews and community outreach. And less money needs to be spent on leftover military equipment. I mean, I remember watching a special about, it was this town of 15,000 people, and they were doing their parade, and they were all in full body armor with AR-15s and a 6-wheeled assault vehicle for a town of 15,000 people. It's ridiculous. But on the other hand, can we also agree that abolishing the police is a stupid fucking idea? That defunding the police would just make every neighborhood less safe? That while there are cases of crappy cops, just like there are cases of crappy teachers and firefighters and ambulance drivers and doctors, there are also a ton of cases of good men and women working hard to keep people safe every day. That peaceful protests are absolutely vital to a free society, and I will die on a hill to protect the rights of people to protest peacefully as much as they want. But those peaceful protests do not include rioting, beating white people into hospitals, looting stores, taking over blocks of downtown cores and just destroying them, or drop kicking and pushing and punching police officers because you don't like them. We're all horrified at the Floyd incident. We're all horrified whenever a police officer does something that goes against the very oath that they took. But to say that this is an epidemic running rampant across society isn't supported by any stats or statistics whatsoever, and pretending that these stats do exist does more harm than good. It takes away from that conversation, and the conversation is important to have because the conversation is what's going to lead to meaningful change, right? Looting Targets and going on social media and saying fuck the police and defund the cops now that does absolutely nothing but inflame the other side and reduce your ability to have a meaningful conversation about the things that actually do need to be done to fix the system, right? God, it's my first point, and I've already done a terrible job of explaining it. I'm so sorry, guys. Is there racism against black people in America? Yes. Are some of those racist police officers? Yes. Do some cops abuse their power for biased reasons? Yes. But there are some more often ignored yes questions. Are black people significantly more likely to be involved in violent crime and pose a bigger risk to police officers? Yes. Does fighting and resisting arrest, regardless of skin color, put police safety at risk and elicit a more violent response from those police officers? Yes. Does rioting, looting, and violent destruction of retail and infrastructure damage and distract from the core message that the protesters are, rightfully so, trying to convey? Yes. Like many things, it's nuanced. There are points on both sides of the debate that need to be heard and need to be filtered in order to come down to some core deliverables, things that need to change in order to improve the situation for everyone. But, and you'll hear me say this a lot, discourse is no longer allowed. We've reached this point where if your view is anything other than every cop is a racist piece of shit and every black person is marginalized because of white people, you're branded a Nazi. We've reached the point where disagreeing with that narrative will get you fired. It will get your life ruined. And like most things in society, we can't function as a whole if we're based on these absolutes. Deciding that everyone should have one viewpoint or they're the enemy, that's a pretty fascist thing. And isn't the far left side of things complaining about the fascists? We have to be able to have these discussions. And just to close this particular gong show off, you're not going to fix racism. You're not going to fix an overpowered and undereducated and undertrained police force by saying that all police are bad and need to be defunded. You're just not. That's not going to fix anything. I get that people are angry. I'm angry too. But this isn't going to fix things. This isn't going to lead to a meaningful solution. That's most people who have jobs and have to work with coworkers on projects and solving problems every day. They've had to learn this, and it's harder for some people than others, but we still learn these lessons. You have to be able to work with other people that you disagree with in order to do your job, in order to get things done. And this is no different. So my closing thought on this is, if you're talking to someone about this and you have a very set or extreme viewpoint on it, just try to listen to the other person. Try to listen. Try to at least value the fact that they have an opinion that may differ from yours. And you might be able to find some middle ground. And if enough people do that, then there might be some actual meaningful change that doesn't involve getting rid of all the police forces in America. Because that's just fucking stupid. And every time I see one of these celebrities who live behind 10-foot gates with like armed guards protecting them saying, defund the police, hashtag get rid of the cops, just stop being so stupid. That is the most idiotic thing I've ever heard in my entire life. Yeah. Anyways, something near and dear to my heart, moving on, movies and games. And they have been hit with this thing called representation. There isn't enough representation in media for people of color, women, or the LGBTQ community. We need more representation, regardless of whether or not the script or characters or storyline require it. So just a couple of things on that. Just a few things. First of all, what exactly do you mean by representation? Representative of the the population as a whole? So if we're looking at that, what is it, like 18% of all Americans are black, and based on the last census, like 4% of all Americans identify as something in the LGBTQ spectrum. So if representation was really the goal, then what, like 1/5 of all movie characters would be black, and 4 to 5 out of every 100 would be gay or lesbian or bisexual or transgender or whatever, right? Now, this especially rankles me because movies and TV and games and comics and books, they're all this weird little thing called entertainment. They all hit at certain people's preferences. You either like something or you don't, right? You either love action movies or you hate them. You are more of a rom-com and drama kind of person, and the Avenger movies have no pull for you whatsoever, right? But it doesn't matter because their goal was to entertain and make money in the process, right? That's the simple formula that has been in the entertainment industry for the longest time up until the past few years. They want to make money, and the best way to make money is to make a quality product that appeals to as many people as possible who will pay their money to you to witness that property, right? Like movies like Aliens and Terminator 2 and even Blade and Wonder Woman, even remember that movie with was it As Good as It Gets, I think, with Greg Kinnear. They were amazing cultural pillars, not because they had women or people of color in lead roles, not because they were representative, but because they were solid stories with compelling characters and really good production value. And they focused on entertaining an audience, and that's it, right? Like the vast majority of people who pay to see movies, they don't care about what color or sex the characters are. I can absolutely promise you that. They care about the quality of the movie. They care about being entertained. Like Blade. Blade is still one of my favorite Marvel-based movies because it was an awesome and dark action movie, and it just so happened to have a black character as the lead. Like, do more of that. Focus on that, and you will make boatloads of money, I promise you. The only people who vocally complain about the lack of representation in media are the same people who will not spend money to support your product. They just aren't. And I hate to go into these examples because I really wanted some of them to work. Like the new Ghostbusters, the 2016 Ghostbusters. I had such high hopes for that movie. I didn't look at that and think, oh, all women cast. Most level-headed people didn't look at that and think, oh, here we go. Here's an all-woman cast, and I hate women, and this is going to be garbage. I looked at that and thought, okay, so 2 of the actresses are from one of my top 10 favorite movies of all time, Bridesmaids, that I will watch. Like, I've watched it about 1,000,000 times because it's still funny and awesome and well done. And I love like Kristen Wiig and McCarthy. Like, I think they're awesome. And Melissa McCarthy, like, my wife and I have watched almost all of her movies and laughed our asses off. Like The Boss is, that's an awesome movie. I love it. I think it's hilarious. Kristen Wiig, I think, is hilarious. So when I looked at Ghostbusters, I thought that was going to be awesome. And it wasn't. It was poorly done. And as a result, it lost money. It did shit in the theaters. I will kind of get to that in a little bit, but like the whole idea of using existing IP the wrong way, I'll talk about that in a second. So let's just get through this here, okay? Like another example is Ocean's 8, the all-women remake that I think it barely broke even. Charlie's Angels. We all know what happened to Charlie's Angels, right? Sense8. So, oh my fucking God, Sense8. Do you guys remember Sense8? So the Wachowski sisters, or whatever, I guess sisters now, they were going to do this Netflix series, and they sold Netflix on this idea that it was going to be this Matrix style sci-fi mind bender. And the idea of it where these people at different points in the world could take over one another's bodies so they could use one another's unique skills. That was such an awesome idea. And I remember looking at YouTube clips of some of the fight scenes, and they were intentionally released to show that this is there's going to be fucking awesome fight scenes, and it's going to be cool, and you're going to love this thing. And just check it out. The first episode of the first season, within I think it's 5 minutes, there's one of the main characters who's a transsexual is just being absolutely annihilated by her lesbian lover with this obscenely sized strap on. It's like an 18-foot black dildo. Whatever. But she finishes, and then she takes this thing off and throws it on the floor, and the camera, I wish I was making this up, the camera zooms in on this big black dick slapping against the ground and all of the bodily juices exploding off of that. And that was generally a focus of the entire first season. This transsexual storyline was a big thing in it. I'm going to say this right now, okay? And I will use an example to back it up. It isn't the fact that it was a lesbian nailing a transsexual that made me just cringe and center on that scene as everything wrong with Sense8. If it was a straight couple and the guy finished with the girl and he pulled out and the camera zoomed in on his dick and there were all these juices flying off of it, I would have had the same visceral negative opinion of it. It's unnecessary. And maybe I sound old-fashioned with this stuff, but do you remember Game of Thrones? And it was the first season, it was episode 3 or 4, I think. So Littlefinger is in his brothel, and he's doing this really poignant monologue about the Game of Thrones and the intrigue of working in court. And while he's doing it, it's like a 5-minute monologue. Two of his prostitutes, these two women, are just scissoring the shit out of each other. They're just going to town. It's a very graphic scene, and maybe there's a nuance there that I'm not getting. I found that unnecessary. Maybe it's just my taste in movies. Anyways, just so getting back to the Sense8 thing, that's why I have this, and I put it here because the ratings for it, even though Netflix doesn't receive rating or release ratings, they were not good, and it was canceled appropriately, thankfully. And the Watchmen TV series, and that's another one, kind of like the Ghostbusters thing, where it is its proprietary name in name only. It doesn't. So I'm gonna stop because that's the next subject. So just forgive me for all this bouncing around here. But my point is that this list goes on. Stop focusing on crap no one cares about and start focusing on making good shit. If you give us an awesome story with a solid female lead, we will love it and support it. If you're producing an action-adventure movie and you want the lead character to be gay, go for it. Just don't make it the sole focus of the character. Just like we would hate a straight character overemphasizing the fact that they're straight. Especially when it comes to action-adventure and sci-fi and fantasy, we want to see shit blown up and bones getting broken and heads getting cut off and those chunky hamburger meat gunshot wounds like in the original RoboCop. No one cares if the lead is gay or straight or really into stuffed animals. As long as he tears a head off, grabs the spine, and uses it as a flail to kill other people. These things are they're ridiculous to focus on. And I go back to my original comment about representation because I don't think that, in theory, it's a bad thing to have a little bit of focus on. But, it starts with the writers. And I think Denzel Washington said this in an interview. Black people have to write their own stories. Latino people have to write their own stories. LGBTQ have to write their own stories and write them well and produce really good work, and people will go see it. I promise you that. People will go see it. People will support the work if you focus on telling a good story, telling a compelling story, and executing it properly. And that's all I'm going to say about it. When you focus on representation and social issues and politics, you detract from producing something worthwhile, because you can only spread so much energy around and effort around to so many components of a movie. So if you focus all of your energy on overemphasizing the political side of things, you're taking away energy and emphasis on making a solid product that people will like. Okay. So that kind of moves on to my next point, and I mentioned it in the intro video, oh my God, intro podcast. The use of existing IP and the rebooting of existing IP. And I used Ghostbusters and talked a bit in length about that one. And here's what I mean by it. So, there are people on YouTube, like the Critical Drinker, who have done a far better job of I was going to say decomposing, you know what I mean, just breaking this thing down and talking about the nuance of filmmaking and storytelling. You can't reboot an intellectual property and completely change how it functions, because that intellectual property is drawing in people who were fans of the original. So you can tell the Ghostbusters story with this cast of women, and you could probably do a fantastic job of it, but just don't have them like firing their guns off like they're actual guns and blowing ghosts up. That isn't how the spectral world works, at least established by the original two Ghostbusters movies. And I go into like the animated series that are being rebooted on Netflix right now, like She-Ra and was it Voltron was rebooted, Thundercats, even Transformers, and I'll get to fucking Transformers in a minute, don't you worry. The whole draw of those properties is the nostalgia. It's the fan base. Like you're rebooting She-Ra and you're rebooting Thundercats and Voltron because people my age grew up watching them. I fucking watched She-Ra. I think a lot of guys my age watched She-Ra because it was one of those Saturday morning cartoons. Like, why do you think so many men were complaining about the She-Ra character on Netflix looking like an androgynous 14-year-old? Because we fucking grew up watching She-Ra. Like that was probably our first crush. And a lot of us kind of like that show. So, yeah, we're going to get pissed, and it's not because a cartoon character geared towards kids isn't sexualized enough. Like, why are you gearing that towards kids? You're using your only drawing card and you're just shitting on it. Like, you're throwing that away. Don't do that. It's just stupid. It's bad business practice. So the Transformers and Star Wars, those are going to be separate episodes, separate podcasts entirely, because there's too much to go into those. But all I'll say is, the Disney Star Wars era, aside from Rogue One and Solo was a good fucking movie. It did not deserve the shit it got. But the Disney Star Wars and pretty much every Transformers movie and TV series, including the newest Siege of Cybertron on Netflix and the fucking Michael Bay movies, and even that Bumblebee, oh god damn it, that was such a fucking bait and switch. Getting angry again. I'm going to shit my pants again, just like the first episode. they play off of the nostalgia of the IP, and then they draw people like us in, us people who are predominantly men in our late 30s to 50s who are at the peaks of our careers, have tons of disposable income, and spend $500 a month on Transformers action figures for his glass case at his cottage. Right? We're those people. So you draw us in with the nostalgia and the memory of, yeah, I used to watch that cartoon. I used to play with those toys. And then you just yank it out from under us and give us this fucking garbage. Like, that's why your shows fail. That's why She-Ra failed. That's why Thundercats failed before it even got out the gate. That's why Transformers War on Cybertron or Siege or whatever is going to fail. Because you're taking the value of the name and you're not giving the value in the product. And Transformers, I don't think it was a political thing. I think it was just done badly. It was executed poorly. But like the She-Ra and the Thundercats and stuff like that, come on, guys. Just come on. Anyways, like I said, I'll save that for another episode, but it irritates the shit out of me. All right, science and society. So 5 years ago, I went, and it's pretty much 5 years ago to the day. I went to a school board meeting for my daughters, and I spoke out against the prospect of intelligent design and science curriculum because another parent wanted it in there, and they were having a discussion about whether or not to at least put a little bit of that information in. I think it was grade 6 science class. Faith and personal opinions do not belong in a science class, and I said this earlier. The only thing that should be in textbooks, on chalkboards, and in assignments is science. Cold, hard, peer-reviewed science. Okay? I think most reasonable people can agree on that. And 5 years ago, I railed against pseudoscience in class, and I was considered a fairly die-hard liberal leaner for that. Right? That's a liberal viewpoint. 5 years ago, much like today, the scientific consensus was unavoidable that human-influenced climate change is real and will destroy us all. Again, liberal Hercules for accepting that, right? Very liberal viewpoint. So fast forward a few years ago to today, and I once again have to go to a school board hearing in a few weeks to speak out against the desire to strike biological sex from biology curriculum. Are you fucking kidding me? You tell me gender is fluid, I'll go with that. I'm okay with that. I'll use whatever pronouns you ask me to because I'm not a garbage human being. And I'll accept that gender is a societal construct that each person can choose as it is applicable to them. I would never want to be the person to tell someone that they can't be who or what they feel they are. And again, I think most reasonable people can agree with that viewpoint. Okay? But to demand the abandonment of biological sex, it's almost worse than the intelligent design bullshit. We are a primate species. All right, we're mammals like chimpanzees and dogs. The propagation of our species is based on males passing their genetic code to females, fertilizing an egg or eggs, and the female giving birth to males and or females. All right? Every person yelling for the elimination of biological sex as a thing, your fucking existence on this planet is proof that you're wrong. All right? Whether you like it or not, your male dad stuck his dirty dick into your mom's sin slash and knocked her up. Okay? Or maybe a dude jerked off in a tube and that was implanted in a lab. Regardless, the biological reproductive traits of a male led to the creation of you through the biological reproductive traits of a female. Okay? The fact that this is a debate at all is shocking at best and idiotic at worst. And if anyone argues with you about this and claims that science is on their side, they are lying. They're just fucking lying. And I've had this discussion before. And people say like the scientific consensus, there are studies that prove this as a fact. No, there aren't. There fucking aren't. Show me. Show me the scientific studies that prove that humans don't have set biological sexes. And again, this isn't saying that gender can't be a fluid thing, that there aren't multiple genders. I'm okay with that, and this is where I talk about compromise. I'm okay with that. But when you talk about also striking the idea of biological male and biological female as sexes, you're bumping up against reality in a really harsh way. And I'm going to talk about this in a second, but this kind of goes towards athletics and male versus female versus transgender athletes. And this is a very real thing, and it has very real implications because of the undeniable, unarguable biological differences, physiological differences between male and female sexes. All right. Anyway, so this is no different than the religious nutcases telling you that evolution is still under debate. I would give my left nut to go back to those days when all we had to worry about was keeping religion out of science classes. I would give anything for those days. And this even slimes its way into athletics, like I just talked about. The idea of transgendered athletes competing as either men or women, it's already become a topic, and I'm pretty fucking positive it'll become a more prevalent topic as time goes on. And a person who goes through the process of transitioning from, say, male to female, no matter how many hormones they take and treatments they go through, if they hit puberty as a male, they will absolutely have an undeniable and fundamental physiological advantage over biological females. It's another thing that the actual scientific community enjoys consensus on, right? Like bone density and muscle structure. They're going to be significantly stronger and faster than women who were born biological female. And males and females have their own segregated competitions for a reason. Maybe a third needs to be created for transitioned athletes. Maybe their biological origin dictates which sex they compete against. I understand the psychological aspect of this, that someone who transitions does so because they feel in their heart that they are really that gender, and I fully support that. And it breaks my heart to think that anyone going through life feeling trapped is something they aren't. They're forced into these decisions. But when it comes to competitive sports, it just isn't as simple as that. It really isn't. And at first I thought, well, it's probably reasonable to suggest that transgender athletes have their own division, like the male division, female division, and transgender. But then that goes back to this earlier comment where if I was someone who was transitioning, if I was born a male, for example, and I knew from the moment that I had memory that it felt wrong. I felt like I should have been born a woman. And I start that transition in my teens. I don't want that person to be told because they transitioned, they aren't the sex they feel that they're supposed to be. So again, I get that debate, and I accept that as a legitimate viewpoint that makes the idea of a transgender division really fucking shitty. So no one's denying that. But again, this needs to be talked about. It has to be discussed because it isn't black and white. It isn't just this either or thing. And I speak as a father of girls who, they do run the risk of getting into high school, and let's just say they become incredible athletes in a particular sport, and they're looking at the potential of a scholarship for college. And all of a sudden they lose that last scholarship spot to someone who grew up a biological male and when they were 17 decided they were female, and they've gone through 4 months of hormone treatments and all of a sudden have obliterated my daughter at the sport of their choosing. This needs to be talked about. So, moving on. Healthcare. What in the name of holy fuck are you Americans doing? The rest of the industrialized world has adopted some semblance of single payer for a very good reason. No one outside of America looks at what you idiots are doing and says maybe we should go to that. That being said, it's kind of tied to immigration and domestic policy. Seriously, just hear me out for a second. I'm just rambling on this. In Canada, as an example, everyone has health care through their province. So in Ontario, you have an OHIP card, an Ontario Hospital Insurance Plan card. Every province has that for people who reside in that province. It's a neat little card with our picture on it. And when we go to our family doctor, a physiotherapist, or the emergency room, we flash that card and that's it. No fuss, no muss, nothing else. Try doing that in Canada without a health card. All right, just for fun, just for poops and giggles, try that. Like my health card expired 2 years ago, and I just didn't bother getting it renewed. So when I went to renew it to go see the doctor, I had to provide 2 pieces of ID, proof that I was living at my home address for the past 2 years, and 2 years of pay stubs. It isn't a healthcare free-for-all up here. They have shit locked down pretty tight. And if you don't have an official health coverage card, you're paying out your ass. So, you see, universal health care is kind of like private health care insurance. It only works if everyone pays into it. And everyone does pay into it with their taxes. Down south, you guys do have a problem with illegal immigration. And trust me, I'm gonna tie these two together for a second here, okay? It's a testament to how amazing your society is. That so many people want to come and be a part of it. They're willing to risk their lives to get away from the countries they were born in and go to yours for the chance at a better life. That's an awesome thing. But if you implemented single payer and opened healthcare up to everyone, your country would be bankrupt instantly. Again, though, figure that shit out. No one should go bankrupt because they get sick. No one should die because they can't afford health care or prescription drugs. And this goes back to that idea of caring for your fellow people in a country of plenty. I gladly pay through my taxes to take care of my family and I, but also every other person in my province. And most of us feel the same way. We're all in this together, and we don't mind our money going towards people who need the health care when they need it. Of course, there are things that need improvement. I mean, no system is perfect, and the Canadian system is one of those. Every system has its issues, but our system isn't going away, and we fucking love it. So this is a little point of clarity to you American listeners. If you hear anyone in the U.S. tell you anything bad about the Canadian system, it might be something that we are challenged with, but don't for a second believe any one of us would want to replace what we have with what you guys have. Because what you guys have is bullshit. And don't let anyone tell you otherwise. This is another thing that we can talk about. This is another discussion we can have, and I'm sure we can come to an agreement. I'll give you this. American medical research is top notch. You guys research the shit out of things, and there's no denying that some of the most innovative treatments in the world come out of America. And you guys have that, and high five to you. But when it comes to quality health care when you need it, and never having to worry about having to sell your home or go into debt or declare bankruptcy to pay for medical treatments, Canada's got you beat. And I'm sorry, but if anyone tells you otherwise, if anyone tells you that we're not happy with our system or our system is inferior to yours, none of the facts back that up. None of them. Your infant mortality rate is one of the worst on the planet. Your mortality rate is middle of the ground. Your life expectancy is lower than Canadians. It's just, your healthcare system, it just sucks. Hopefully some of you guys listening agree with that. If you don't, we can talk about it, but you're wrong. Oh man, I sound like I'm on Twitter now. Freedom of speech. Holy shit. is this an incredibly powerful thing that you Americans are guaranteed, how fragile a concept it is, and how badly would you fucking miss it if it goes away. And never in my entire lifetime have I ever thought I would witness it being challenged as much as it is now. So, just as a reminder, the First Amendment, being upheld and clarified by the Supreme Court, mind you, basically states that you can say whatever the hell you want under two conditions. And I've heard these examples given before, so forgive me. But the first is you can't yell fire in a crowded theater and cause panic. And you can't specifically threaten violence against someone. All right? Those are the two conditions. Everything else is protected by the First Amendment. You can say whatever the hell you want. And I'm reminded of a movie, it's an American President. Yeah, American President. And I encourage you to look up this YouTube clip. It's just look for President Shepard speech. It's the speech that the main character, President Shepard, gives at the end of the movie. And there's a line that perfectly summarizes my view on free speech. So, and I'm kind of like, I watched it before this video, so I have the line mostly right, but let's see you acknowledge a man whose words make your blood boil, who's standing center stage proclaiming at the top of his lungs an opinion that you would spend a lifetime opposing at the top of yours. Like, how perfect a description is that? And, that perfectly summarizes what I think about free speech. Free speech isn't free. Freedom isn't free. You pay a price for that freedom. And the price when it comes to speech is that you are going to have to tolerate speech from other people that infuriates you, that you disagree with on such a fundamental level that it just fills you with red hot rage. That's the price you pay. Because, free speech is one of those things that you're always an election away from losing it. So right now, 5 years ago, the whole free speech debate was at the other end of the pendulum. People like myself were worried that our opinions on things like abortion, on things like intelligent design not belonging in science classrooms, on climate change, that those would be banned. Those would be annihilated from our rights. And now it's back the other way in current day where you're not allowed to disagree with a lot of the social narratives that are out there right now. But I mean, again, to anyone who thinks that me saying that racism in America is more nuanced than just cops bad, if you don't think I should be allowed to say that, if you think I'm a Nazi for saying that, I got some bad news for you. You are an election away from losing your rights to say the things that you want to say and do the things that you want to do. Like right now, the Democrats have a majority in the House. They don't have the Senate. They don't have the presidency. Let's just, for hypothetical, say that, in this upcoming election, President Trump wins again. Heaven forbid. I hate that piece of shit. But the Republicans have the Senate, and let's just say they get the House back, and they have enough that they can overcome filibusters. For example, you have the very real possibility of an entire political system banning you from saying and doing the things that you feel you should be able to do. So freedom of speech, it goes both ways. And I really worry about this one because it's something that I think a lot of Americans take for granted. Like, there are industrialized countries, Canada included, that don't necessarily have that kind of protection dictated in our constitutions or our charters of rights and freedoms. Canada is an excellent example with the, was it Bill C-61 or C-16? I can't remember which number it is. It's the one that basically Jordan Peterson is a monster for railing against, apparently, because it compels speech. And I do see where he's coming from. It's not referring to someone by the gender pronouns that they say they want to be referred to by. That can get you thrown in front of a tribunal, and there are very real consequences of being found guilty in that tribunal. You can be fined. You can even face jail time uh, because you don't want to use pronouns. It's viewed as violence for you not using those pronouns, and it just all I'm going to say on this again is, you know, freedom of speech is a very special thing that not many countries have. And you Americans have that. You have it enshrined in your Constitution. Your Supreme Court has upheld that and protects that. And all of you should protect that. And it goes towards the original point of this entire podcast, the being able to disagree with someone, but respect the fact that they have an opinion that's different than yours. It's paramount to the freedoms that you guys enjoy. And I believe in it with everything in my heart and soul. All right. Speaking of which, the justice system. I won't dwell on this too much other than to say that the independent judiciary is one of the main pillars of a democracy and of freedom, along with a healthy and independent press. And every time a justice is chosen because they are of a political side or because of their versus their political or their dedication, to a law interpretation, or every time a 25-year-old, regardless of gender or race, is made a judge, more damage is done to that entire institution and the fabric of society as a whole. Each and every one of you should vomit at the thought of a Supreme Court pick not receiving at least a little support from the other side of the aisle. And, you know, right now things are so polarized, I don't know if that will ever happen. But at the same time, you know, I would be tickled pink if someone like a Trump, for example, nominated a Supreme Court pick and a bunch of the Democrats begrudgingly said, yeah, well, you know, I don't like them, but they're very experienced and they'll do a good job in that role. Like that's what you have to aim for, because some of the earlier Supreme Court justices that were picked were that. It turned into a political tool. I think it was back in the 80s during the original creationism debates, and that was struck down, and the religious right slash the right wing at the time decided that was the battleground, that they weren't going to be able to change the country through legislation because people could vote. What they can't vote on are these lifetime appointments to the Supreme Court and to federal courts. So that was the strategy, and the justice system became a political tool instead of an independent body that would focus on interpreting the law and applying that to some of the modern challenges that society experiences. And I mean, again, guys, an independent judiciary is vital, and it sickens me every time I see a nominee being tossed around as a political grenade. It's bullshit. I promise I'm almost done. There's a couple more. Trump. I'm old school. I have this opinion that someone who leads a country should be among the best of us. They should be brilliant. They should be level-headed. And they should be really good under pressure. They should have financial acumen. And they should be educated to the tits. They should have like 10 degrees. And just be these brilliant people. That's who I think a national leader should be. And everyone who wants to lead a nation should aspire to that. And that leads me to Donald Trump. And my God, he is such an idiot. I don't have any other words for it. He's just, even if you love the guy, he's fucking stupid. He is stupid. and he's just a bad leader. He's impulsive. He's arrogant, and a little bit of arrogance is okay, but not this kind of arrogance. This is crazy arrogance. He's the worst possible leader, and not. I don't care about his views towards China or him calling the coronavirus the China virus, or some of the terrible racist and sexist things he said and done. I mean, outside of all of that, which are alone reasons to say he's a shit leader, he just he doesn't lead. He doesn't lead by example. He does everything in his power to circumvent the very foundation that he is supposed to put on his shoulders and elevate. And I didn't even write that script. I got that off the top of my head, which makes me awesome, and I should be a president. And I'm totally kidding. I would suck at that. But my point is, Trump is dumb as shit, and he shouldn't lead a country. And honestly, if you guys elect him for another 4 years, that's America's gone. America's gone as a leader in the free world, and it's not because of left versus right. It's just because you reelected someone who has no idea how to lead a country, and you made him a leader for another 4 years, and that's on you. The sad part is I can see him getting reelected. I really can, and I hate to say that, but the this focused and intense push to move society incredibly quickly and without discourse to the far left side of opinions, there's a lot of people like myself who maybe that's moving too fast, and we're eventually going to get there, but like give us 10 years of biological sex before you try to eliminate that. Maybe have some black actors lead movies, but don't pretend like the entire country is nothing but black, and every single character in every single commercial and movie and TV series has to be black. Just it's that kind of thing that I think is pushing a lot of people to vote for Trump. And honestly, these polls, I see the same thing happening that happened with Hillary. A lot of people are embarrassed to say openly that they would vote for Trump, but when it comes time to vote, they're voting for Trump because the alternative is not in their wheelhouse of understanding. And this goes to my hatred of Twitter, because Twitter it's mistakenly taken as the voice of the majority when it really isn't. It's an extremely vocal, extreme minority of the country that somehow has just been accepted by all the news media outlets as the voice of the nation when it isn't. And most of the people who yell at the top of their lungs on Twitter aren't voting. They're not registering. They're not getting out to the polls on voting day. They're not doing any of that stuff. So right now, I think they have Biden locked in with a victory at 278 electoral seats. Really? There hasn't been a single debate yet. There hasn't been a single discussion. How about you just calm your tits and we just wait for a minute for that? How's that sound? Okay, so the last one I'll talk about, actually there's a couple more. Masculinity, and this has hit me for a while, and the Gillette commercials that came out a while ago, that's a famous example of it. But masculinity has taken a beating over the past few years, and being a man has gone from something respectable and admirable to vilified and being poisonous and undesirable. And what I would say to that are, we're taken for granted. The sacrifices we make are ridiculed and downplayed, where we're in most of the dangerous professions. We experience the vast majority of workplace injuries and deaths. And I'm just speaking from my personal opinion, but my friends are the same way. We hold our families together. We're the ones that sacrifice everything day in and day out to take care of our families. We Like if I'm sick, I'm still going to work because my stepson wants a new gaming PC for his birthday, and I'd rather chop my balls off and fry them and eat them than let my family down. Yeah, my strength in everything I do, all the sacrifices I make day in and day out, are suddenly called toxic. Like, go fuck yourself. You know, being a man doesn't mean that you have to put women in a detriment. It doesn't. Being a man is not something that has to go above being a woman, or any of that shit. Uh, being a man means what it means for most of us. We take responsibility. We have integrity in the things that we say and do. We take care of our families and our loved ones and our friends. We care for other people. We work our asses off because that's what's expected of us. And to pretend anything different is disingenuine at best. So, you know, don't ever let anyone tell you that being a man is bad. If in your mind being a man means, going out and trying to slam as many chicks as possible at bars, yeah, you do you. I find that a bit questionable, but, whatever. What I do find manly is those things that I just mentioned. And if you're a guy who does everything you can to take care of your family, I will have a beer with you, and we will be best friends because that's what being a man is all about. And you know, yeah, I'm not going to dwell on that. I find that irritating. And the last one I'll talk about is just welfare, and this is another thing that I think there's a lot of debate on, and it used to be a right versus left thing. The right wing hated the idea of spending money on welfare, on just handouts to people, as they called it. My view is that we're in countries of plenty, and we owe it to one another to help those in need. We're all part of a community, and a community only works if everyone works together. So I believe strongly in supporting the homeless, in supporting single parents. And I say single parents, not single moms, because there are single dads out there. And let me tell you, that's another topic for another day. The legal system is incredibly skewed against men, against dads when it comes to custody, even if those dads are better parents than the moms. And I'm sorry, that probably would get me fired alone or canceled for saying it, but there are some moms out there who are pieces of shit compared to the dads, and the dads don't get to see their kids because they're not the moms. So fuck that. Anyways, single parents, people supporting families on minimum wage jobs, right? Like, I believe very strongly in supporting them. But at the same time, why is it unreasonable to expect some accountability coming the other way? My duty as someone with something is to help my fellow countrymen and women. And they, in turn, have a duty to show results for that help, right? To take advantage of the education grants and learn a skill that will result in them getting a job that actually pays well enough so that they don't need that welfare assistance any longer. Anyways, that's basically it. And I'm well over an hour of rambling incoherently now, so I'm just going to close this thing off and say that those are just some of the high level sort of topics that really allow or lend themselves towards a conversation, or they should lend themselves towards a conversation. And I feel that my views on those things, they're not unreasonable. They're not quote unquote right wing. They're not quote unquote left wing. They are just viewpoints, and I think they're logical viewpoints. They're definitely viewpoints that can be argued against, and I would actually welcome that. And maybe I'm wrong on some of these things. Maybe talking to someone about these things will give me a perspective that I didn't have before, and will change my opinion on them. I hate to say it, But it kind of worked that way in the opposite direction with abortion. And I mentioned earlier that a woman's right to choose is paramount, and that's something I'm never going to be able to get over in my head. Uh, but at the same time, I think it's fucking ridiculous when women come out and they're proud of getting abortions and they're saying like, "Oh, I wish I could get an abortion. I want to have two a year." It, like no one should be fucking proud of that. I don't. This isn't going to come out properly, but it should be a terrible, horrible decision that you have to make, and it's something that you wrestle with. It should be a sad thing. And I don't mean that to sound as though I want people to suffer when they decide they're going to have an abortion, but it shouldn't be something that's celebrated. It shouldn't be used actively as contraception. It's just there again. 5 years ago, I was a bit more liberal on that. I thought, well, any argument against abortion is just ridiculous. Like you're a religious nutcase. Now, like, while it's not an argument against abortion, I do think that there has to be some middle ground there in terms of what is acceptable behavior as it pertains to an abortion and what there isn't. And that is going to get me in a shit ton of trouble with a lot of people. So once again, I'm going to stop there. I promise upcoming episodes are going to be far less heavy-handed and definitely a lot less political. The next podcast is going to focus on video games. A lot of the shit that I grew up loving. Just it's going to be a trip down memory lane, leading up to current day, and how maybe it's something related to getting old, but I don't like video games anymore. And that's not to say that there aren't any quality video games. It's just I don't have the heart for it. I don't have the ability to just zone life out for 5 hours and crank through a game. Like, I remember when Final Fantasy X came out, I took a day off work on the release day so I could just spend all day and all night playing that fucking thing. The thought of doing that now is just so daunting and unbelievable that it makes me physically ill to just consider it. So anyways, I hope I haven't chased you guys away with this stuff. If you disagree with me, that's totally fine. I would love to talk to you about it. I really would. Just send me an email. It's right down the left at gmail.com. I'm on Instagram with the same handle. Tell me I'm full of shit. Tell me I'm completely off on something, and let's see if we can exchange some ideas. And I really encourage that with everyone. And I promise, and I think you guys need to adopt this in your lives. Always approach disagreement with being polite and being understanding and being reasonable and coming at it with the respect of someone having an opinion that differs from yours. And I think we'll all be a lot happier as a result. So with that, I am going to go take a giant shit and then pet my dog and then go to sleep. Not necessarily in that order, if you know what I mean. Winky blinky. So take care, guys. Really appreciate it, and we'll talk soon. Oh, God. Oh, I tasted that burp. Oh, stuff came up. Oh, it's not good. Oh, it tastes terrible. Oh, that tastes terrible. Oh, God, I got a chunk in my mouth. Oh, shit.